Okay, awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Digital ATDN's presentation. Today, we have Navigating OER Resources, Learn Where to Go and What to Look For. Our presenter today is Brianna Patriarca. And before we jump in, I just wanted to share some information from ATDN. Usually, I will share some slides with you guys, but today, we wanted to show you one of the new updates that we had on our website and a new event that's coming up. So our services are in the main page. I'll share the link once we start. But we have here, if you need assistance when you sign up to Digital ATDN or access the website, you have all our services here. You have the on-demand videos app, which is our curated list of short videos to assist you in the different programs. We have the live tech support session, where you could schedule a one-on-one tech support session with one of the specialists. We could help you on how to use the program, but also we could help you on how to implement the program in your classroom. We have Create My PD, which allows agencies to submit PD requests based on agency needs. And this is a Google form that you fill out. And then the newest addition here is the help desk portal. Here you can submit a ticket to Digital ATDN and a tech support specialist will reach out via email. So the conversation will go by email. It wouldn't be live, but you'll be able to ask your questions. If you needed access to something you don't remember where you go, or you needed a couple ideas, you can feel free and use this here to submit your ticket and we'll be able to assist you. One last thing, we have Digital Learning Day coming up. It's in February 27th. So Digital ATDN will be hosting the event. So I'm excited for that. Love working with these events. We have different virtual sessions going on here. So you'll have a list of the sessions, as well as we're doing a scavenger hunt for that day. I'm not going to reveal a lot of information with that yet, but we will be sharing how the scavenger hunt is going to look. It's going to be digital, and then it'll tie into a game that we're not announcing yet either. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of things prepared. We've been brainstorming and working through a lot of these sessions to show not just the technology and how to use it, but how to bring that into the classroom in different aspects. So we'll be sharing this with you, and you could just click here and it'll take you to register for the session. Okay. If you
We'll
have any
get
questions,
emails about that, right?
yes.
Okay.
This will be in the email with the slides that you'll receive as well.
Thanks.
Okay. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm here helping out, and Brianna will be answering questions as well. So okay, stop sharing. You can take it away, Brianna.
All right. All right. Are you able to see are you seeing my presenter notes or are you seeing the
Yes.
presentation?
I can.
I see the presentation.
Myself.
The presentation. Okay.
Oh,
I wanted to
okay,
make sure
sorry.
I shared the right screen. Okay. So thank you for joining us for Navigating OER Resources, Learn Where to Go and What to Look For. Once again, my name is Brianna Patriarca. I am a technology specialist for EastCon. I have prior experience teaching GED and CDP English in adult ed. I was also an adult education program facilitator for 4 years. And for about the last year and a half, I've worked in technical support and providing training assistance for EastCon, Digital ATDN, and other state agencies. So what are OERs? So OERs, or Open Educational Resources, are free open license educational content and materials. So what we mean by open license is you don't have to contact and request permission to use the resource from the original copyright owner. That does not necessarily mean we can just totally take it and claim it as ours, right? Plagiarism, red flags everywhere, right? Sometimes we do have to attribute to the resource. So for example, in the Introducing Technology into the Classroom training that I did for digital ATDN, I had found this lovely technology integration plan that really had a lot of what I was looking for, but was still missing some things. And, I wanted to kind of modernize it a little bit more. So I revised it, and at the bottom of the training is the attribution. So I credit the original resource, but because it's open educational resource, I can revise it, remix it, and modify it as needed. So that brings us to the 5 R's of OERs. So with open education resources, we have the right to retain. So we can make, own, and control copies of the content. We can reuse it. So you can use it in a wide range of ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be just for stand up and deliver classes. You could use it to create a video, post it on a website, use it in any way you deem necessary. You can revise it, so you can adapt it and adjust it and alter the content itself, right? So when you get a Steckvon GED book, that's a hard copy book. You can't really edit it in any way. OERs, you can. You could translate it and create a different version of it. You can remix it. So maybe like that technology integration plan, for me, parts of it worked and other parts didn't. So I was able to take the parts that worked and combine it with my own creation to completely remix it into something that works for me. And then you can redistribute it. You have the right to share it, whether it's the original content, your remixed version or revised version. Once again, making sure that you do attribute when you need to based on the copyrights, which we'll go over in a little bit as well. And I forgot to say, sorry, if you have questions at all, feel free to just unmute and ask, because it is a little tough for me to see and read the chat while presenting. So just feel free to unmute and ask away. So why open education resources, right? Been in adult ed, I know we are inundated with resources. We attend all these PDs and learn about all these things, and there's all these books and online licenses that we get. What's the benefit of OERs? Those resources that you may get in your programs, such as Aztec Learning or Burlington English, which require those online seats, or textbooks like Steckvon Ventures, those are aimed at very targeted audiences. Often they have certain restrictions, such as like licenses or seats. There's copyright requirements, and there's usually an associated costs that can limit accessibility to students. And we all know funding is always an issue. So once again, you could be limited in the number that you're available to provide to students. Open education resources are free. You can hear that word a lot today. They are free, free, free. They are curated resources that can be applied to a multitude of audiences, levels, and content areas. And rather than general internet searches, OERs allow you to easily search for content based on topics, grade level, standards, skills, and more. Search options do vary by the type of OER, but in general, it's a little easier to just find specific things and a multitude of versions of that specific thing that could be applied to your students and meet their specific needs. Studies have shown that 93% of students who use OERs do as well or better than those using traditional materials, which is amazing. So there is definitely a value to it. So benefits of OERs for educators: it's a huge time saver. Instead of reinventing the wheel and creating something from scratch, you can find existing resources and remix them and customize them to meet your needs. I don't even want to know the number of hours I've wasted taking like something I found and like retyping and copying and pasting it all to make it work for myself. Many OERs, you don't have to worry about that, can very easily be accessed and edited. There's a lot of technology integration opportunities. So a lot of the OERs offer online resources where students are actively using technology and building those skills. You can easily curate your own resources from OER. So it's a great way to collect resources for yourself to use now or later. And once again, did I mention that they are free? In terms of students, it's a way for students to access free materials from home. So as a program facilitator, I felt like I was constantly having to go look and like check what we had for Steck bond books and do the counts and then do the math on how many students we had versus how many we're probably going to have to take home books and how many we needed. And with OER resources, you don't have to worry about that. You can just print out 100 copies and hand them out and you're good to go. Or they're accessing those resources online and you're not even printing anything. It also provides additional learning opportunities outside of the classroom. And there's differentiation opportunities. You can easily find things that meet different levels, that cover the same topics or content, and customize it to meet those different needs. So if somebody is better with audio in terms of learning and somebody else is better with visual, you can easily find two things covering the same topics and apply it to the same lesson, all through one OER. So how to find OERs. So as part of the resources that you are going to get today, I have provided some of the more well-known OERs, and that's where I would recommend starting. If possible, once you're going into an OER, I highly recommend trying to go in with a narrowed search. So having some idea of what you're looking for, maybe you're looking for a specific topic, or you have the topic, but you're really looking to round out your lesson, and maybe you really want to look for a specific game or simulation or some sort of real world life application to really drive your goals home with that lesson. When you find your OER, you definitely want to evaluate the source and the resource. So anyone can submit an OER. So anyone can create and post an OER. A number of the sites that I'm going to share with you today do have a filtering option or some sort of commenting or rating system. So you can see if it's peer reviewed or, kind of read through the comments just to see what the recommendations are in terms of it. You definitely want to look to see if there's any issues with links, images, language. Some OERs might be slightly outdated. There were a couple when I was searching for examples for this presentation where I'm like, yes, this is great. This could be applied to like every type of program in adult education. And then I would go to it and the link wouldn't work or the article was no longer there. One other thing you generally want to look at too is what is required for the students to access that resource. So for example, if it's a video from Edpuzzle and you want to see the students' responses, you're going to need to create an account. And if that's something that you don't want to do, even though it's free, then that's just something to consider when evaluating the resource. You also want to look at, is the resource in itself everything that you need, or does it need to be remixed and revised to meet your needs? Is it really going to hit what you're looking for students to learn? And is it going to fill out your curriculum or lesson? And then for me, the most important thing is to save it, which sounds so obvious, but I am constantly kicking myself for finding something, forgetting to save it, or I'll save it somewhere and I don't remember where I saved it, if I bookmarked it or if I copied and pasted the link somewhere. And I always assume I'm going to be able to find it later. And then I waste a bunch of time trying to retrace my steps and search to find it all over again. So I'm going to show you later on some ways that you can manage these resources and some kind of tips and tricks on saving and managing them. And then another thing to be wary of is the rabbit hole. So if we went to Google right now and just searched grammar lessons, there's going to be tens of thousands of resources. And once you get into those resources and start clicking on sites, you're going to probably find links to other sites that are helpful. And then you're going to just end up like 10 sites deep potentially, and you might not even be looking at grammar anymore. You might have already strayed into short stories and be way off from your original starting point. So it can be beneficial when you're just looking for inspiration, but when going with a specific target in mind, definitely be careful about going too deep and too off course. Make sure you save as needed and, kind of keep track of where you're going. And as I said, it can also be a great way to find new resources when you get in that rabbit hole. But if you've got a timeline, just want to kind of stick with the topic at hand. All right, so let's practice. So these are some common OER resources. So Crowd Ed Learning Skill Directory, it focuses on specifically academic, workplace, and lifelong learning competencies. You can select by the topic, and then it is a curated list of resources as well as some description regarding the resources. The Digital Skills Library is a curated list, really focusing on skill development. It does have a lot of real life applications involved in those lessons. I went down the rabbit hole with Digital Skills Library for about a solid hour and a half on Friday and ended up about 10 sites deep. So it has a lot of great resources, and it connects, those resources connect to a lot of great resources as well. The Marshall Leveled Reading Program is stories with activities. Excuse me. OER Commons is a large public digital library of open educational resources. You can also post content, your own OERs on there, as well as create and collaborate with other educators to improve curriculum. Links, self-paced online courses, and searchable resources for adult educators. Teaching skills that matter, once again, really focusing on skills with this OER. Common Sense, they also have a number of resources specifically focusing on digital literacy and citizenship. One of the other things I like about them is they have curated lists of platforms that can be used in education and sites and resources, and they also provide reviews of those, which I thought was very helpful. And then Merlot is also OER. This one tends to have, I would say, probably more higher level learning in it. But one of the things that I liked about them is you can search by an ISBN. So for example, if you were looking for resources that kind of aligned with STECFON or were similar to like the STECFON GED books, you can search by that ISBN number and it will pull resources from online that are similar. And then OpenStax is free OER textbooks and associated resources to those textbooks. So let's go find some. So let's say I'm looking for something to do with metaphors. I have no idea what I want to teach for metaphors, and I just need to find something. So I'm going to go to OER Commons and search for some metaphors. And I can filter. So I know that this is, high school level. And I'm really looking for a specific like lesson or homework assignment. And I'm going to go with this something you should know, HyperDoc. So I could associate it with specific standards if I wanted to, or if I was searching for a specific standard. I can link it right to my Google Classroom because this is a Google Doc. Once you open it, there we go. Okay. And as I can see, this, if I wanted to use this in class, I would need to do some editing. For one, that is not me. And for two, we're in Connecticut, so the Nebraska standards wouldn't apply to my students. So I'm going to just say this, put this aside, and know that, this might be a good lesson for me for GED or CDP English, and I would have to do some revising or remixing. So let's go back. And so maybe I'm also teaching GED and I want to find some math, some stuff for my math students that are really focusing, and they really need to improve on fractions. So they're lower level. So I'm going to go to Merlot and I am looking for fractions. And with here, you can also look at other libraries or the web. But just for this example, we're going to stick with the Merlot collection. So once again, I'm looking for like high school level. Where is that? Down here. And I really want them to see how this applies in real life. So they understand the value of it. So I'm going to do simulation. And then if I look through, I feel like everyone understands pizza math and dividing up those pizzas. You're in a group and you're doing the math on how many slices everyone kind of gets so you don't overeat. Or in terms of like chipping in for the pizza. So I'm going to go check out this game. It gives me a warning because it's external, because once again, anyone can post. And then there's competition mode, tournament, teacher. So we can play this. So when I actually tested this out, I didn't read directions because I'm like, oh, I'll be able to figure it out. And then I got totally lost as to what I actually needed to do. So I figured out real quick that I would probably need to provide additional direction if I was actually using this in class and have the directions posted somewhere in case my students are like me and just dive in thinking they'll be able to figure it out and then don't. So I know that this could be a usable resource in my class and that I might need to do, I can't really remix this because it's a game, but I would need to incorporate some other pieces to it. All right, so let's do one more. So let's say I'm also teaching family lit because I just teach everything in this imaginary adult ed world that we're currently in. And I want to do health literacy with my students and I want some ideas. So I'm going to go check out Crowd Ed Learning Skill Directory. And I'm going to check out health literacy. And since it's ESL students, I'm going to go with this picture stories for adult ESL on health literacy. And this is a lesson. So this is obviously not something I could just print out and hand to students. So I would need to probably wrap it up with some other materials of mine, or, maybe make a pretty PowerPoint to kind of summarize some of the conversations and details. So I have all these resources. I'm going to get out of at least the OER sites just to make this easier for navigating later. So I have these resources, but what do I do with them now? So some things to think about in terms of managing your OER resources, and really this could be applied to curriculum in general. I think consistency is key. I started out in secondary ed and I was like, you know what, I'm going to create these binders and that's where I'm going to store all my resources and it's just going to make my life so much easier. And then I found myself constantly pulling from one binder because I liked the metaphor lesson I did in one and moving it to another. And I ended up with like 7 different versions because of course then I would revise it. And I just kept getting lost. And then I started doing digital, but I had stuff in OneDrive, stuff in Google, stuff all over the place. So consistency is definitely key. I think deciding where you want to store your items and storing them all there will make searching a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to manage those curriculum resources. I highly recommend thinking about just in general what will work for you. For me, I personally prefer Google Sheets and linking to things because I think Google is really friendly in that regard. And that way I can just search one document versus trying to search an entire drive. I think if you kind of have a go-to search, so if you're really looking at topic like metaphor, instead of having metaphors in your something you should know folder, you could just have a metaphors folder and everything relating to metaphors. It would make sense to have it in there. So whatever type of descriptors your go-to kind of first search term is, think about how you would want to organize it in that way. And then Are there certain features that you want in terms of how you're going to organize your resources? Do you want to be able to add comments or tags or easily share resources with peers? Do you want something that's more visual? Or are you okay kind of navigating a spreadsheet? Because those can get really big and overwhelming sometimes. Um, so once you kind of narrow in on that, and I am going to share some examples of what those might look like. I do recommend, when possible, if you're finding a resource that can be saved at all as a file, definitely do it. One of the resources that I found as an example for this, it was a read, write, think resource. And the lesson was based on this article, but the link was broken. And then even when I searched for the article does not exist online anymore. So if that was something I'd stumbled across years ago, I'd be very frustrated if I was assuming it was going to work. But you can save documents as PDFs when you're on a website. I highly recommend doing that. I used to copy and paste articles into Word and then link to the original article in the footer. So that way I could always kind of just check to see if it had been updated or revised. And it's just one less headache in terms of accessing your resources down the line. And I also recommend cleaning out regularly. Move things to different sheets or sections or folders, just kind of keep your go-to resources as your primary, and then have everything else kind of somewhere else where you can still access it, but it's not cluttering up your space. So what might this look like? So these are kind of like the ones that I would recommend that I think are probably the easiest. And there's definitely other ways you could do it as well. So in terms of Google Drive and Google Sheets, Google Drive, right, we can do folders. You can organize it by that. You can color code your folders. Like I said, prefer Google Sheets because I can link to my drive, so I can just search my sheet instead of trying to comb through my drive trying to find it. So I did provide an example of that, which I'll go over in a second. But the pros of it, it's easily searchable. You can add commentary tags, organize by folders. You can easily add things from your drive and into Google Classroom. You can store any file type in Drive and links and sheets. The one thing I will warn is if you use a Mac, you can't access HEIC, which is an app file type, if you're using a Windows. I learned that the hard way when I was using my Mac for something, and then I tried accessing it on my work computer. It was like, why isn't this working? So that is just one little thing to be aware of in terms of that. Some file types might not be able to be opened directly in Drive. Some cons, it does require some skills with Google Sheets if you would like to use the Google Sheet or Drive. Sheets can get overwhelming visually, especially if you have a lot of resources. I would recommend, if you are using a Google Sheet or even Drive, that you are consistent in how you organize it. If you're going to use keywords or links or anything like that, making sure you keep updating them. And in terms of the file types, if you're using random file types like HEIC, then you might not be able to open it on any device through your Drive. So this example, and these are clickable examples, so you could access them via the slides that Jose will end up sending to you later on. And it will make a copy of this Google Sheet, so you could actually just take the copy that you're going to get when you open it and make this your own. So for my example, this was actually how I started organizing for this presentation. I just kind of started looking at OERs and what they offered in terms of searching and content. I was like, I want to track this to make my life easier. And then my actual OER resources. So for example, I would recommend, giving it a title. I liked tracking the site that I actually went to, because if you notice, I kind of favored OER. I have 3 from OER, a couple from Merlot. So, later on down the line, it might help me in where to start, because obviously I was finding quite a few resources there. The link to the original. So that way, if I remix or anything, I can always go back to the original and see what it was. So as you can see, my something you should know, fractions, and picture health stories, those 3 resources I found in the search are already in here. I indicated the program, um, the specific subject, and then the material type. And then if you wanted to indicate level as well, you could do that. I think it's helpful to have notes. So, I kind of indicated as an example what might need to be changed about it, or kind of a note to myself with the fractions, unclear, and then link to remix. So as an example, this was our something you should know. Oops, where'd my spreadsheet go? There it is. And here's an example of a remix. Oops, it's going to make a copy if you open it in the spreadsheet, so that you could choose to use this if you wanted to in your classroom. So very similar. I just removed the picture. I think I added some additional stuff in here. I kept the same colors. There was another one through who am I writing about your assets. The original was more like a PowerPoint slide with a writing assignment. And I had this idea, I forget her name, I'm blanking on it. It's in, there's this famous actress from The Good Place that started this whole I Weigh movement that I thought was just so fascinating, because it was taking away from looking at your body image and just more like those personal attributes. And it's not in this one, it's in the other one. But I was like, oh, that would be interesting to include into this lesson. So you can link to your revised and remixed works, so you can easily access the original or revision versions, and you're not with like 20 different copies, because you keep remixing the original. And then you can also do additional tags. So I kind of organized like, okay, if it applies to multiple programs or if there's specific topics. And the way that this works, if you actually wanted to use this for yourself, is you can type anything into here for the programs, and it will add it to this list. So if I added test will populate in here too. So you can just kind of keep adding different tags, and anything that's listed here for an OER site will list here for a resource. All right, so that is that one. I'm going to X out of there. Google Classroom. I can't share the Google Classroom that I have with you because it is my personal classroom for EastCon, and it requires you to have a specific domain to access it. But just to give you an example, this is actually one that I created as a program facilitator because I felt like I was getting inundated with resources and it was just getting printed and shoved into a drawer and then not looked at ever again. So I created this to start tracking that. So you can, what I did was just created the topics and then put in resources underneath. We have my something you should know extended metaphor. What I liked about it is you could add like description to it. I could add commentary to it if I really wanted to. And what I like about the Google Classroom is if you really are heavily using Google Classroom within your own classrooms, you can easily pull it from your OER classroom into the student classroom. And to do that, you do reuse post. So if you're in your classroom that you actually use with students, you would just do reuse post, and then you would select whatever one you want, and then you can, delete your commentary or descriptors and post it as an assignment for the students. So it just makes that transition really easy as well. Okay. So the limitation with Google Classroom is any file types will be saved in your drive, but the links won't be. So if you're saving specific links, you can't just search Google Drive. You can't really even really search Google Classroom very well for those. So if you're storing a lot of resources in one classroom, it can get a little overwhelming and a little hard to find specific things, unless you're really good at organizing them by the topics. In terms of Wakelet, this is not a Wakelet I created. This was actually one that I found when I was looking through OERs, and I thought it was a pretty good example. I do recommend with Wakelet that you organize by topic, level, content, just to make it easier to find the resources and organize them. And you can add text to create the headers, which you'll see in the example. The pros, you can add any file type. You can add pictures to tiles to make it more visually appealing. You can add descriptions. I feel like this is probably the easiest to use in terms of technology skills. Cons with it, it is a little limited in terms of organization and filtering. You can't really search by keyword, can't really comment on things unless you just add it into the description. And there really is no easy way to like link any remixes back to the original unless you just create it as a new tile, which could make it kind of big if you're remixing and revising a lot of the original materials. So this example is specifically resources for teaching English. So they used the text feature to kind of create headers. And then they just posted. They have a lot of Google Docs. Towards the bottom, they have games. But this is just a sample of what that could potentially look like. And you could like, if you really like the resource. Oops. And then Padlet. So Padlet, similar, I like to think of it more, it kind of looks more like a poster board to me, with very pretty backgrounds. So once again, I highly recommend organizing by topic, level, content, area, whatever is the easiest way for you to organize and kind of recall where your resources are. You can color code posts. It's definitely the most visually appealing, I feel like. You can rate your resources, you can give them stars or scales, and you can add commentary to posted resources. Can't really easily search or filter, and you can't, similar to Wakelet, easily link to multiple resources such as remixes. So for this example, I just took all the ones that I kind of found up here and had in my Google Sheet and kind of posted them just so you can see what this might look like. You can rate, you can add comments, color code. So visually a little bit prettier than the other options. It's really whatever works for you. There is no one size fits all on how our brains work and how we like things organized. And all of these examples are collaborative resources. So you could invite people to contribute. You can also add people as editors, and the level of access that you give is really entirely up to you. You could also potentially create a Google site if you were really comfortable with Google, or had a couple coworkers that were comfortable with Google and you all wanted to collaborate on sharing those resources. Okay. So I created a guide, literally a 2-page guide you can have printed at your desk to help you in terms of navigating and managing. So all of the links are clickable, as well as the image recommendations. I also highly recommend, as you're exploring open education resources, if you would like some additional support in learning how to navigate a specific one, you can always contact ATDN, Digital ATDN, and use our tech support hours, and we can do a one-on-one with you to assist with that. Whoops. You know what? I have it open here because I know it would look a little easier. There we go. Okay. So kind of flowchart-ish. So you're looking for the following content. If you're looking for academic, workplace, life skills, the OERs with a color block have that ability or have that type of content. And as I mentioned, these are clickable. If you're not sure, specifically like if it's a workplace or other, because some of these sites, I should say, it is a workplace skill, but it's taught in more of an academic manner. You could just specifically look at topic, or if you have a specific material type, like you want a game, but you just don't know for what yet. You can also search by grade level, standard, language the material is in. I think OpenStax has Spanish is the only other language. OER Commons, I think, has a few more options than that. And then you have your resource now what. So some questions to consider when evaluating the source, questions to consider when evaluating the resource. And then I linked to here about this more specific information about the Creative Commons licenses. So a lot of the sites it'll say like CC by, for example, somewhere on the page. And that is one of the Creative Commons license options. So this tells you specifically what attributes or what you can do with the resource. I will say too, some of the OERs do link to pay resources. So a lot of them have that filter where you can put that you want to only look at free resources. But I find this site helpful. A lot of times when I'm searching to use material, I usually have this page up so I can just check the copyright to make sure that I'm not violating any copyright laws. Nope, where was I? Here I am. Okay. And then save it the best practices. So I linked to Wakelet, Padlet, Google Classroom, Google Drive. This just takes you to Google Apps in general, because you could use Docs, Sheets, Slides if you wanted to. As I mentioned, I prefer Sheets personally, just because I'm very comfortable working in Google Sheets. I do recommend saving resources for later. I actually meant to point that out in my spreadsheet example, which I already closed. But you can always just highlight, like throw a link in there, throw some notes to look into it later, and then, explore it when you have time if it looks like it has a lot of valuable resources. And then some things to consider when remixing. And I always recommend you save your remixes, and if possible, link back to that original source. So that way it's easy to always find kind of the origin, in case, there's been many times where I've messed up my remix and I need to go back to the starting point because I've accidentally deleted something I didn't mean to delete and I can't undo it. So I just find that very helpful. Any questions? Any thoughts? Has anyone done any or used any OERs, or is that a go-to resource for anyone? Oops.
I just had a follow-up.
Mhm.
If you either have undo or you could contact us, we can help you find it.
Yes. Awesome.
Oh, you have Judy said this is useful for me in the near future. Thank you very much. Donald said not for me. I'm kind of new to OERs, but they sound interesting. So I just wanted to jump in quick. The USA Learns is in its own, it's considered like an OER because it's open. And you can there's different ways that you could use different programs. And the reason I'm mentioning USA Learns is I worked with Donald, so that's one of the resources that he uses. So there's different ways or different formats and how OERs look. It's sometimes we're using them, we're not aware that that's a open educational resource. But just like a fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's definitely more than what I listed here too. I mean, I literally searched open educational resources for adult educators. You do have to weed through a lot of postings from colleges encouraging their faculty to create open educational resources and guides on that. but there are a number out there that you can use. These are just some highly recommended ones to kind of make your life a little easier instead of having to go down that rabbit hole to find them originally.
Also,
Yes, Judy, the slide,
we
Jose is going to send the
oh
slides. Sorry, Jose.
oh no, it's okay. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'll be sending them tomorrow morning. Um, so you'll have an email with the slides and the things that we shared. As I mean, you could also use the help desk portal. Like if you're not if let's say you're looking through it, and I mean we've gone through tons of rabbit holes at this point. So if you wanted to get an idea where to start, or you have use this as a Google search, submit the ticket. I'm looking for something like this. I don't want to get overwhelmed with too many options. I just want one or two options. You could submit the help desk ticket, and then we could guide you based on the information. So the more specific you are, the better. But then, if you want to avoid going through all the full process, you try to look for something um, targeted that you know that you could get the use out of it. You could do that way as well. So that's a good way to use the help desk ticket. And I'll post the link here so you guys can access it. Go ahead, Brianna.
Oh, I thank you very much for attending. I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to chat them or unmute, and um, definitely take advantage of the tech support if you wanted further assistance with finding open education resources or any technical support in general.